All right, we all got people in the room. Good morning and happy 2023 Virtual Cantina family. Welcome to our Virtual Cantina Star Wars Best of 2022 Extravaganza. My name is Spencer. I'll be one of your hosts for the day. Joining us, we got a plethora of characters joining us, a whole cast, if you will. First and foremost, joining us from the Jedi Archives, we have Mike. Mike, how are you today?
Morning, everybody. It's very early here in California, so especially after New Year's Eve party, but we're doing well.
Fantastic. And his co-host and admin for the Star Wars Comic Book Club, Bryce. Bryce, how are you, my man?
Doing well. We stayed in last night, so I didn't have any problems getting up this morning.
There you go.
Easy day. Also, the main face behind Twitter with Spencer as well. So definitely
one half our Insta-twits, as we call them.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Badge of honor.
Okay, badge of honor. And joining us from Ireland, and one of the hosts of Blabba the Hutt, which is Ireland's premier Star Wars podcast, and going to be doing a live show at Boonta E4, which tickets go on sale in 1 hour. Gary, how are you, mate?
How are you, buddy? Happy New Year, everybody. I guess it's a lot later here for me than it is for everyone else, so I hope everyone's had their morning coffee.
Oh, looks like Jeff's on his way. Okay.
Cool. Excellent.
Poke the bear. Next, Monday nights is not Monday Night Rollins. It's not Monday Night Raw. It's Monday Night Rebels Revisited. And joining us today, first and foremost, is our good friend. We call him MVO, but Mark. Mark, how are you, sir?
Hi. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm on the East Coast, so I got a little more sleep, but great way to start the year with all you guys.
Absolutely. And kicking off 2023 back here in Massachusetts, Ashley. How are you, Ashley?
Hey, I'm good. Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year to everybody watching.
Happy New Year to you. And now kicking over to the first show we ever broadcasted on the Virtual Cantina Network, coming to us from the home of Star Wars Celebration 2023, we have Gio. Gio, how are you, sir?
You're on mute, Gio.
We're getting off to a good start early.
Awful, sorry. Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks. I'm doing well. Glad to see everyone's joining us bright and I guess very early for the East Coast, definitely for the West Coast. But yeah, nice to join this Camtono of characters to kick off the new year.
Yeah, the amount of Cantonos on the other side of the room. I'm going to pull that out. Yes. So as we're getting in right now, we're bringing in finally the two of the three amigos who join me every Thursday night for the Virtual Cantina watch along. Because he is fashionably late. Welcome and Happy New Year. Jeff, are you awake?
Still bringing it up.
I guess not.
Still joining.
I know, I had to do that on purpose. But producing the show tonight and also the EVP of the Virtual Cantina Network, Dave, how are you, sir?
Hey, doing well this morning. It's a happy New Year to all.
Yes. So we are under 100 days until Celebration, which I'm very, very excited about, which we're all, that's the antithesis of everything that we do is to bring you closer to Celebration and keep the spirit of Celebration going the entire year. So what we're going to do is we're going to have each show talk about the highlights of 2022. And then in the second hour, we are going to talk about what StarWars.com listed as their best of 2022 and our hopes and dreams. And look who's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this
bright-eyed. Oh
Ooh,
man.
and look at the beard. Look at the beard.
Oh yeah, look at that.
The
What
beard.
happened?
Starts off
He
the
fell
new
asleep.
year with a
He fell
bang.
asleep in La Brea.
It's gone. What
That was
happened?
roadkill, and
Yeah.
Did you
I
lose a
appreciate-
bet?
Yeah, I can't take it
New
as too
year, new
professional.
me here. With my noisemaker.
fantastic. Well, hello, Sherry. How are you? Thank you, everybody who's joining us today. So, what we're going to do today, as we're starting off, we're going to go around, and each show is going to talk for a few minutes about their highlights for the year, and look forward to where they go from there. So, we're going to actually start, as mentioned, with the first show to ever broadcast on the VCN, the Unifying Force. So, I'm going to take it away, Dave and Gio.
So, Gio, do you want to go ahead and get started with what are your favorite moments of the last year and the unifying force?
So I think that it's just been a really nice consolidation of where we started from, and kind of deepening and widening the kind of conversations we're having ongoing about Star Wars, and just enjoying this kind of deeper journey. And I feel like just in a personal sense, the unifying force, now that we've got kind of like our triumvirate with yourself and Kat, I think it just allows us to have a really good time every couple of Sundays, to kick back and talk about Star Wars from like a broader scope, with a kind of off the cuff element to it, but also some focuses on Star Wars projects that have been coming, thick and fast throughout 2022. And it's been nice seeing the contrast in how both like the general reception has been to some Star Wars projects, and then our kind of similar and differing views, for example, on like the very wide scale of kind of quality of Star Wars TV, when you've had kind of like the randomness and kind of like gently poking fun at how things like the Book of Boba Fett were kind of a little unsteady and rocky, but then being able to really still pick out the highlights for ourselves, and just talk about it from like a wider personal perspective and a cultural perspective. And I think Andor and Tales of the Jedi were really huge in the positive aspects of that, to counterbalance some of the unsteadiness from earlier in the year. So I really enjoyed those conversations that we had about the kind of grander storytelling that Star Wars is doing, and the kind of diverse elements that are kind of coming in, and almost bringing it back to what we talked about initially, which was the kind of mythological aspect and the broader kind of influences that George Lucas had in starting the whole Star Wars from 1977. So it's been nice just to have some awesome projects to reflect on, and to have our own takes on, and just ride that momentum through the year. It's been fun.
Yeah, as I'm going to agree with a lot of the things that you have, and kind of add on is, I think in the last year we've really gotten kind of our technical issues that we've had at some points, like really kind of ironed out, and get to where we start and get everything going pretty well. We've done a couple of like live remotes with some of us on different locations. So we were, I think Catherine was traveling at one point, and we had her zoom in from a remote location, and I've traveled a couple of times, and we've been able to still get the show going.
Yeah, that was fantastically impressive to me. I was just blown away by how that managed to work multiple times. So
yeah,
kudos. Really,
it's done well with getting some of that technical stuff down. I think the last year for us really, and I think it's kind of the same for Jedi Archives really as well, this is kind of a second half, a reboot, because 11 months ago we did our show Becoming One with the Force, Death and Dying in the Star Wars Universe, and we did that because of the loss of our friend Rich, who I've been thinking about a lot over the holiday season. So I think we've just kind of, after that period of time and after a break, is we've come back with the show and we did that show, and it had a lot of meaning, I think, for us and for a lot of our other Star Wars family on the other shows and parts of the channel. But we've delved into some really like deep topics like that. We've gone with some of my favorites are kind of the Star Wars what ifs. I think we started that. We did one of those before this past year, but we've done in the past year. What if Padme had lived? You know, we've talked about some different what ifs would happen with different on factions of the rebellion and different sorts of things. We went ahead and we did, is Anakin still the chosen one? You know, that's a big kind of Star Warsy creation of arguments and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, some of the favorites too are what a lot of our other friends, I'm sure, are going to be discussing that they do on their other shows, is watching the Star Wars projects that are out now, and then giving our views on it and making predictions that are inevitably very, very, very wrong for what is going to go on with the rest of it. We definitely and obviously have no sort of insight into Dave and John or Lucasfilm, and no clue what's going on. But I think possibly, like my favorite moment from the past year on the show is we were doing the show about sequels, you know, the best sequels in all time, obviously Star Wars containing that, you know, Empire Strikes Back should go without argument, one of the best sequels of all time. But what I loved about that show is how it organically kind of gave us our next week's topic, which was the Curse of the Threequel. Because it just, you know, Star Wars possibly being one of the exceptions to that with Return of the Jedi, but how that you know, the third movies so many times go on, and that's the kind of thing that I love about our show is we get the super deep thing in death and dying, and then we're able to talk about those serious topics, but also within film, because all of us are huge film buffs, nerds, whatever you want to say. So I think those are some of my real favorite moments of the show.
Where do you see Unified Force going in 23?
So where it's going in 23, going forward, I think we're going to do more of the same. It's what's worked for us this year is I think we've discussed our first topic. I think it's going to be the next week that's going to be up, is we're going to do a kind of Bad Batch review / preview. We'll have had the first episode air by that time. We'll kind of review that and then kind of tie it into film and tie it into the real world in going with, do good soldiers really follow orders? You know, is kind of stretch that film review into something more. What do you see, Gio? Where are we going this year?
We are going to be just keeping the momentum going, I think, heading towards Celebration, and as exactly as you mentioned, using the kind of the guiding lights of the Star Wars projects that are coming up to evolve our conversations in terms of the depth of them. Like we've mentioned, this kind of like militaristic aspect of the Bad Batch, I think, could be explored far beyond the scope of just a single show. Because in some ways you could say it's fundamentally half of Star Wars, the wars being the second word in the property title. But I think just going on that, having these kind of fixed marks for the Star Wars projects coming up, looking forwards, and then also looking and taking a step back and looking broadly at the kind of cultural echoes that Star Wars makes us feel personally, and is also reflected in the material and the property that we're getting with the characters and storylines going forward. and seeing how it connects and either rhymes poetically, as George Lucas would say, with what's come before, or if there's a kind of dissonance. And that's where sometimes you can get a lot of the very diverse conversation online, I think, where people can get into like little echo chambers of, oh, I thought it was this, though I thought it was that, or I wanted this. And I think what all of our shows on Virtual Cantina do really well is truly put that celebration aspect back into Star Wars, which is kind of why we're all here in the first place. We're looking at the positive aspects of it because there's enough kind of difficulty and hardship going on around anyway. And it's been, I think, just broadly speaking, disappointing to be a fan sometimes online. A few years back when we started to see those kind of arguments and hostilities going on in terms of conversations about I wanted this or that for stories and films, and where I think our show, The Unifying Force, and all the shows on the VCN do really well is focus on those positives and give us reasons to appreciate and be thankful for what we have, both in terms of Star Wars content coming up and previously, but also the community that we have, the conversations we have with each other as this kind of family unit online is kind of unique. And anytime you've got a couple of individuals coming together regularly, there's always a kind of unique alchemy that sparks some great ideas and some fun conversations. And I really enjoyed and want to continue on that journey. And I do have to say just one last thing. I wasn't going to mention the death and dying aspect and remembering our friend Rich, but because that was the previous year, but that's actually been one massive motivator in me, just keeping up my enthusiasm for this and keeping going and wanting to still contribute is because, of the memories that we had with the Virtual Cantina coming together during a hard time in the pandemic and lockdown. And knowing that we had such a fantastic community member who gave so much, and I really feel like the unifying force. It would have been fantastic to have. I like to think that, and maybe this is very aspirational on my part, but Rich would have been loving our show and would have loved some of the conversations we've been having, and would have been a huge part going forward. He's greatly missed, and every time I think of the VCN and the unifying force, I actually think, you know what, I do wish Rich were here, and I hope he's proud of the kind of community we've continued to propel going forward and to celebrate together.
Absolutely. Rich was a very important member of our group. Mike, before we move on, do you want to chime in a little bit about Rich?
Yeah, Rich, we were really close. So he was my roommate. I met him through the VCN. So, never knew about him before. Pandemic struck, met a whole family of friends here in the Virtual Cantina. And Rich and I were super close. And he stayed with me a few times, came to visit. We were roommates in Florida with the Star Wars Family Vacation, the first one. And he was just a really awesome guy. And that's actually how I got started with the Jedi Archives, because Rich and I talked comics. And Spencer, you asked me like, hey, why don't you and Rich, would you like to do something with comics on the VCN? I'm like, you know what? I asked Rich, you want to do that? He's like, yeah, let's do it. And we're like, but we don't know how to do shows, record stuff. So we added Jonathan, which is one of the founders of the Star Wars Celebration page. And he was the one that was in charge of recording and getting the shows ready for the YouTube channel. But Rich and I, we just said, what are we going to do? Just talk comics. And his loss was really devastating for me. He was supposed to come stay with me during Celebration 2022, but of course he didn't make it. And but yes, he definitely would have loved everything about this. He was a bulldog for the show, and he's a little rough sometimes. If you knew Rich, he's but pure heart, pure gold. I miss him so much. But I think he'd be proud of us, and that makes me keep going to keep doing this in his honor, and plus with all the new friends that I've made and everyone that's joined us along the way, because then we had Lakota originally to bridge, Europe and America on the Jedi Archives, and then we added Bryce when we lost Rich, and he's been fantastic. So, but definitely miss my good friend Rich a lot. Wish he was here. Thank you.
No problem. Well, we'll get more into Rich and Jedi Archives a little bit later in the show. But we're going to jump into another show, which is become actually quite popular and brought a whole new element to the VCN. And that's our Rebels Revisited show. So I'm going to hand that over to Mark and Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Von Olen. If you haven't seen our show, along with Jeff, one of the hosts. Ashley, introduce yourself and tell everyone your background, because I think it's so interesting, your experiences with Star Wars, and then I'll get into mine.
Okay. My name is Ashley Brienzo. I am currently an Star Wars sketch card artist for Topps, as well as a freelance artist. And I actually met Mark at, I think, New York Comic Con 2018 when, oh my goodness.
Oh,
that's awesome. When I brought my portfolio up to him to show, and he hired me on the spot, and I started doing sketch cards for Topps.
Nice.
And that's how I met Mark. And yeah, so it kind of got the ball rolling, and I would see him at conventions and Celebration Chicago, and Rebels is my life. It's my favorite thing in Star Wars. Out of everything, like, there's some close seconds, but like Rebels is everything. It's got so much heart. And so when I was asked to join Mark in doing a weekly Rebels show discussion about how it ties into the greater Star Wars storytelling, it was like, yeah, sign me up, but also like, because it's like the show has been off the air since 2018. How are we going to do this? But thankfully, there's been so much tying it all in and keeping it alive that we have enough to talk about every week for the last 7 months now. It's amazing. So
it's kind of crazy that 7 months in, we're not even, we've barely made a dent, by the way. So for anyone who tunes in on Monday, you know that we start with a topic and then we left turn and we're on like a completely different planet. It's a lot of fun. We put a lot of prep work in and then follow none of the notes. It's kind of hilarious. So going back to like, yeah, the notes are there if anyone wants to see the work behind the scenes. This Google Doc is gigantic. So as Ashley mentioned, we met such a long time ago, and it's the same thing with Spencer. We met on a whim at a convention, and then we met up again, and me knowing Frank from the autograph show got me co-hosting to do the Darksaber watch along situation. And then I very stupidly said I had an idea for a show, and I was told that it was going to happen and I had to do it. I was contractually obligated. So Rebels Revisited was born. And yeah, Ashley and I, our biggest thing, we got connected with Jeff, who produces our show every week, by the way.
Yeah.
You guys were saying, I don't know how to run a show. Like, I can pop in and talk about a topic, but I don't know how to do any of the pushing of the buttons or how to like build a community or any of that. So one, thank you guys for making me and Ashley, as the newest kids on the block, feel so welcome and a part of the crew. 7 months in, I feel like fully integrated, and I feel like we found our voice. Like 2022 is like a rough year all around. It's like the continuing of the pandemic. It doesn't end. But we had some bright spots. I would say the celebration leading up to, or Celebration 2022, which was like leading up to the launch of our show, which premiered on like June 1st or whatever it was, that first week of June.
Yep.
June 6th. I should know that. It's order 66,
will now.
June 6th. That build up, and then getting to see each other in person, me and Jeff and Ashley and Spencer and Dave and everyone. Like, we were so ready. We had business cards printed up, like we were handing them out, getting people to watch our show. That was very cool. And then from there, it took off. We had to figure out new topics every week. Andor August became Andor August and then some, because they delayed the release on Disney Plus. So we just had to keep churning out ideas. We watched every minute of Mon Mothma content across Clone Wars and Rebels and everything else. So yeah, I thought that's part of the challenge too, is like what is relevant in the moment, and predicting it, getting it wrong, revising, and then making the plan for like what next year is going to look like, which we're spec'd out through, like, I think March, given all the new content coming. We know all our show topics, I think, through the end of Q1, which is kind of crazy.
Mark is on top of that. And, you know, it's really cool to like make those predictions, as Dave said, and just watch how horribly we crash and burn when things actually happen. But that's what's exciting about it, because it's like we're fans too, and we know every one of them are sitting at home making their predictions of how things are going to end, and they're not always right either. And sometimes, like, I'm really interested to see on how this year is going to go as far as predictions, because there's some wild new stuff coming through, and it's going to be exciting.
The Ahsoka show sounds insane. If anyone's seen like that Reddit leak, which I won't get into on here, about what they think the show is going to be about, it seems so nuts that it can't possibly be true. I'm not going to mention any of the specifics, but that information is floating out there in the ether. And I was like, well, I don't know if it's true, but there's some ideas in there that are interesting. And then that affects your own beliefs of like what might be coming. I was like, well, if there's some truth to this, what is the structure of the show going to look like? We've already seen a bunch of actors cast. They finally confirmed live action Hera, supposedly, right? Although Disney.com didn't say so. It was like the Hollywood Reporter or something. So is that true? Like, that's, what was it, Mary
Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah. So is that really confirmed? I don't know.
It's not 100% confirmed, but at the same time, it's I think been like one of the worst kept secrets since Celebration. About the shows. I mean, there's always really bad, like Rosario was the worst kept secret in Star Wars. She didn't help it with Twitter, but that's besides the point. But Mrs. McGregor, you know, I think she'd be great. Not that I don't love Vanessa Marshall, but I think that
I am curious to see how Vanessa's going to be in another way.
Yeah, same with Ashley.
I feel like they will.
Yeah, Ashley will be included too.
Seeing Ramona Flowers play Hera Syndulla would be actually kind of.
I think she proved it when she played Huntress in Birds of Prey. So I think she can be tough and a little bit of warmth to hers too. So
I'm excited to see all these live action versions.
Is Spectre 7 going to show up?
So I've been screaming for Jason Syndulla. I wanted him in the new trilogy, right? Like episode 9 or something. I think they would be foolish not to include him, because you always need like a kid of some type for the Star Wars, you know, the young kids. Like everyone has a kid. Even in Mandalorian, there's Grogu. So there's always some child. Now we've seen actually the child actors. We actually just talked about this on our last Monday show. How out of nowhere the kids this year really delivered. Little Leia,
phenomenal.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi show. You know, like Little Andor was great. Like there's gonna be a whole like we need a world between worlds of all the little kids teaming up on something. That'd be the next thing.
That'd be awesome. Watch that.
Yeah, but I think that Jason Syndulla would be the age, if we're setting this in the age of the New Republic between 6 and 7, he could be a teenager. That seems plausible, because he's like, you know, if he's born before Battle of Endor and now we're 10 years out, like I'm trying to do the quick math, but like he could be a tween or a teen. Either way, like that's an okay age, especially if you're coming into your Jedi powers. It's like a coming of age story. I don't think that should be the crux of the show. I think that's a different show, but that would be a cool inclusion. I would like that if they do it right.
Well, if they want to do it right, they're going to have to kill off Hera, because Star Wars is all about having orphans.
Yeah, well, we have one dead parent already, so I think you just need one. Yeah, just the one.
Just the one.
Yeah.
So you guys mentioned that you guys got Q1 all queued up. I mean, we got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about later on. So you, are you going to be mostly centric about how Rebels affects that show, or are you going to branch out to how Rebels can be a standalone as well?
So this is actually what we struggle with every week, right? Because we could, you know, the show ended 5 years ago, basically. How do you, like, what is the premise of Rebels Revisited, right? Like everyone's watched the show, and for the most part, how do you recap a show that's already over? So our belief is that the show is alive, and, you know, the Ahsoka live action show is basically the sequel, and you can see it like infiltrated into the bloodline of all the other shows. Andor was a great example of that. Every week Andor came out and it was like, oh, another connection to Rebels, and not like an hit you over the head Easter egg kind of way, but like thematically, or a belief system or even a character. We saw it in Obi-Wan as well, which is right when we started, so that was like perfect timing.
Yeah.
But for our plans for January, February, and March, Ashley loves the Bad Batch, loves. So we're going to connect everything like that we see in Bad Batch each week. If something big happens, we are going to continue to do our watch alongs, and we do want to get into more thematic discussions. I actually think as some of our 2023 calendar evolves for later in the year, crossover discussions with the various channels, especially like the unifying force, like what does it mean to be a Jedi Knight, I think is a great question that Rebels asks. We're going to see it come to life again when Ahsoka goes live. You know, what is her belief system as a Force user who didn't graduate from the Jedi Academy and had to carve her own path? How is Luke teaching these kids to be a Jedi? Those questions will continue to permeate. And I think they're ones we could do on our show, or we could do across with the various hosts. I think those are the ideas that we're thinking of 2023. So it's not just like watch an episode. And we tried to mix it up this year too. We had some of those, you know, listicles, favorite moments, deep discussions, but mostly our favorites that we're doing prediction shows, because we're never right. Like those are the best.
Never.
You go back and watch them and it's like, oh man, we are, and I'm a licensee. I should have some insider knowledge. I got nothing.
Awesome.
Very much part of the whole family of predictors that are not quite right.
Yes. Yes. Tune in on Mondays to see how wrong we are, more than anything else.
It's
But Lord, we
entertaining.
try.
Yes. Well, guys, thank you very much. And we're going to hear from Mark and Ashley in the next hour. And don't forget, in 30 minutes, tickets do go on sale for Movie E4. So take a look at our page. Hit refresh. Only 250 tickets going to be sold for this event. So we'd love to see you at our annual event the night before Celebration. Now, we're going to change gears to Virtual Cantina adjacent, if you will, part of our extended family. Very excited to bring this gentleman on, especially considering the fact that he was, as I mentioned before, the first friend that I made in Star Wars Celebration by happenstance, just running, meeting each other online to get into the 40th anniversary panel and being friends ever since. And now they are going to be doing a live podcast at Bunta Eve in our sanctuary room. So from Ireland's Blob the Hut, I give you Gary. Gary, how are you, sir?
Hi guys, how are you? It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And again, thank you for everything you guys are doing for the fandom. Everyone is doing such incredible work, and it's just an honor to be a small part of this. So thank you very much for having me.
So Gary, what was your highlights, best of 2022 for Blabba?
Blabba was an interesting year. So first and foremost, Spence, I should probably say Kate, sorry that she couldn't be here. For those who haven't listened to Blabba, we are the most unlikely duo. We are a lad from Dublin, Ireland, and somebody from Tucson, Arizona. So we are a very, very unlikely duo. And our show was a little bit different in the sense that our show was always described as crossing the streams, in that other areas of fandoms will always make it into our show in some shape or form. And I think that's the beauty of what our show does. We look at things from a very different point of view, but excuse the pun, that's what we do. In terms of Blabba this year, we've actually done some really, really big interviews despite the difficulties. Kate was actually going through the middle of a house move, so it was a little bit tricky at times to try and sit down and plan shows and get interviews done. In terms of interview highlights, we just most recently released our first Lost episode, which was with Kevin Kiner. So I have no doubt that fans of Rebels, Clone Wars, anything like that will enjoy it, and there will be further follow-up on that. We were also very lucky to have ILM royalty Peter Curran come along as well and have a little bit of a chat with us within the early days of the developments of what became, I suppose, ILM as we know it today. From the perspective of other interviews, then, we sort of focused on the literature, and it's a big point for us. And Spencer, you've heard me say this umpteen times, and we have said that the strongest part of this fandom for a long time has been the literature, in terms of the quality of the writers, the ideas, and the creational freedom that they're given. But most importantly, I think it's how it's executed. And that was done particularly well, I think, with the High Republic coming into play, in that here they had this world building opportunity where it was essentially a blank canvas and it could have gone completely and utterly wrong. or it was going to be the other end of the scale. And I think for sort of a first-time venture, it went very, very well, which, let's be honest, it had to be when you bring together publishing powerhouses of that caliber and that ilk. It had to be done very, very well, and it was. And I suppose another sort of focus that we had, and I'd be very interested to get your takes on this as well. Obviously, during a pandemic, this majorly affected what Star Wars was able to do in terms of, let's say, productions, particularly on the big screen. But we've been saying for quite a while that it's our feeling that the Disney Plus era, let's say the small screen era, is at least the immediate future, because what they were doing just on the big screen did not work. No matter what they were doing, it was just too divisive. There never seemed to be definitive plans in place. And we saw that with obviously the new trilogy. Solo and Rogue One were obviously the outliers within that, but I don't think that was quite enough to pull it back. But I think what they are doing in terms of the small screen with the animated shows, and in particular, we know Rebels, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, how fantastic they've been. And I think in terms of looking forward, Skeleton Crew and The Acolyte are going to be huge in terms of what they can do. I think The Acolyte is most interesting because we're having this world building experience in the literature with the early days of the High Republic, but The Acolyte is choosing to come along more so towards the end of the High Republic era. So are they leaving such a huge gap in place for a specific reason? Or was it a case of that they wanted to give us opposite ends of the scale, to give us an indication of how it started in the literature versus what the final product will be in The Acolytes? So I think in terms of the tonality, it's maybe going to get a little bit darker, because Andor, I suppose if we look at it, Andor was sort of a winning formula. I'd hope everyone would agree with me in that sense of what they did and how did it. Andor was pretty much a winning formula. And I think in terms of The Acolyte, if it follows
Absolutely.
along with that sort of stylistic approach and the darker tonality, I think they will have another winner on their hands. So in terms of what's going to happen on the big screen, I'm not quite sure. We all have our hopes and our wants for what's going to happen. But I think basically, as Mark said there, your slate is kind of figured out. But I think moving forward, it is going to be the Disney Plus era on the small screen is going to be sort of the immediate future and the push forward, because it seems to just fall into place a heck of a lot better with what Filoni and Favreau are doing versus what was going on the big screen.
So we're in 2023 and Blah Blah Live is coming back to Celebration in a big way. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so performing at Cantina, this will be our Cantina Boonta Eve. My God, what is wrong with me? I have New Year's brain. Performing at Boonta Eve, this will be the first time we've been back at Celebration, where we actually hosted a panel in 2016 at Celebration. So performing at Boonta Eve will be an enormous bit of fun, and as Blabba do, we will have a lot of different topics and content that we will be going through. And one thing we're also known for is that each and every one of our live recordings, we always give away prizes. So we do have a lot of prizes in store and a lot of content that we will go through, which we will maybe sort of finalize as we get closer to guest announcements and as the rumors and the excitement start to build. But if you are coming along to Boonta Eve and you are coming to Blabba Live, you will no doubt have a shot at winning some pretty cool prizes, some of which we have announced already, and some we're not able to. But the main man there on the screen knows what we're working on. So hopefully, if we get it approved, we can put on something a little special.
It's going to be great. And once again, Gary, we're so excited to have you join us at Boonta Eve, which tickets go on sale in 20 minutes. So keep an eye out on the Virtual Cantina Facebook celebration page for the link to go live. Now we're going to move on to our second show that we ever had on the Virtual Cantina Network. Michael talked quite a bit about it when we talk about Rich, but let's talk about the highlights of the Jedi Archives in 2022. So take away, Mike and Bryce.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, our show's kind of funny. It's a little interesting because it's just us getting together, having fun, talking about stuff that we like. And I think we get sidetracked. I mean, Mark and Ashley, you think you guys get sidetracked? We just have no notes, so we're straight off the cuff. But what we do have in common is a love of Star Wars and all the print material. And the High Republic comics, in this year, I think you're absolutely right. This Project Luminous was fantastic for Star Wars because it was something that was well planned out, and it resulted in something that was very positive and very well received. And who would have thought if you plan something out and have it, a big idea of where you're headed, it's going to work. It's like, wow, what a concept. But things that I want to bring up that I really enjoyed about our High Republic comics is we started with the Adventures series with IDW, which was fantastic. That was really one of my favorites, because I should also say that we do review the comics, but we end up talking a lot about the novels and all the books because it's all kind of connected, because it is all part of the same Project Luminous, right, Bryce? So it's hard not to talk about one and to omit the other because they're all very interconnected, which is one of my favorite things about this whole series, because I love all these extra connections from the Star Wars universe to make it feel even bigger and more smaller. I don't know if that makes sense, because it branches out, touches everything else, and then brings it back together. Kind of how Rebels is tied into all these shows. All those connections make it so much better for me, because I'm an original OG, saw Star Wars in '77, and when Star Wars was gone, all we had was the books. And I really, delved into the EU, and I loved it all, and that made it really fantastic for me as a fan. And I think that the High Republic comics and novels are doing the same thing now. And what I love is they're slowly but surely bringing back in all those successful things from the EU and making them canon, like Thrawn, great things. And one thing I just saw recently is that in Galaxy's Edge, in one of the bathroom stalls, there's some Arabesh graffiti, and it says Mara Jade lives. I think that's fantastic because, for those of us that are just geeky fans, that's the kind of stuff we live for. Even if it's not true, we love that it's there, But yeah, IDW Comics, the novels brought so many characters that it was really pretty much for me impossible to keep track of who was who. But looking at the comics, I got to see what they looked like. And that helped me form a little hook in my brain so I could remember, oh, I know who this is. And from having read the novels, I could place them. We also got the Marvel comics for the High Republic, which is for older individuals, because IDW's Adventures was for the younger Star Wars fan, but really easy reads, really fun. And then we got the Marvel Comics High Republic series, which is great. And we went through all the waves of Phase 1, which was awesome. And we really got to know these characters. Unfortunately, a lot of our favorite characters died, which I'm not happy about that. And I think that's thanks to Kevin Scott, right, Bryce?
100% Kevin Scott's fault.
Yeah. He loves killing everybody off. It's like, we don't want Game of Thrones Star Wars. We just want our favorite characters to live. Let us enjoy them a bit. And now more recently, we've started with the Dark Horse took over the Adventures series, and it's fantastic. I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. I love all the things. One of the fun things that I brought into the Jedi Archives is I rely heavily on League of Comic Geeks, which is a cool website. It's free, keeps track of all the comics, and you can see all the different variant covers. And so we usually start out with that. Look at all the variant covers because the artwork for the High Republic comics is phenomenal. We have so many artists, and then to see all those covers, it's just, it brings joy to my heart. I really love it. One thing I want to add too is that the Wayseekers in the High Republic brings a different view of what the Jedi is. So like for Unifying Force, if you guys go into like what these Wayseekers are, I think the High Republic brings us a lot more ideas of what it is to be a Jedi. And Ahsoka, the more I read about the High Republic, the more I feel like Ahsoka is bringing us back to the High Republic era of what it is to be a Wayseeker. Because she's not a Jedi, but she's not a dark Jedi because those are not canon, right? But Wayseekers are canon. And it seems like Ahsoka may be a Wayseeker. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I mean, we realize that the Wayseekers in the High Republic have white lightsabers, and they kind of go off on their own and do their own thing. They're neither probably the closest thing you'd find to a gray Jedi in the High Republic or what the Wayseekers are. They're loosely tied to the Jedi Order, but they more find themselves doing things that they want to do versus what the Order might want them to do.
And little side note, Yoda himself was a way seeker for part of the time, we're finding. So it's not that once you leave, you can't come back. It's just kind of like a period of you finding yourself as a Jedi. So I thought that was interesting too. And I think that's more in the Yoda series of Marvel Comics, which I've been reading, but we don't review, but we might be reviewing because I love
think
Yoda.
we'll be reviewing.
Yeah, we love Yoda.
So for sure.
And Bryce, what do you want to add? I talked a lot.
Well, I can add a lot, but I know we don't have a ton of time, so I couldn't agree more with Gary about the High Republic, and just when I first heard about it, and how it was being done, Project Luminous was being done, and behind the scenes, I was like, this is just going to be fantastic. And when you read Light of the Jedi, you're like, okay, I'm in. I mean, the first chapter is terrible by all accounts. It is one of the like, wait, what just happened? Like, we're 10 pages into a book and like everything has gone bad. But it's just, it pulls you in, and they've done such a beautiful job with the stories of weaving the comics and the books. And it's not just the adult novels, it's the junior novels, and it's the young adult novels. Like Mike and I read everything. Like we have to, like we can't. But the beautiful thing is you don't have to. If you only want to read the comic books, like from Marvel, you get a complete story. If you want to read from IDW or now Dark Horse, you get a complete story. Or if you want to just read the adult novels, a complete story again. So that's the beautiful thing about it, is if you only want to go down one avenue, you can. But if you want all of it, you can really invest in a lot of time. And it's just been incredible to be asked to obviously be part of this team. It was such a huge honor when Lakota reached out to me and asked me about it. Obviously, in the wake of Rich's passing and everything like that. So I felt very honored that they asked me to do it. And hopefully I've been living up to Rich. I'm pretty vocal within the group and making sure that we're recording every couple weeks and everything like that, so we can continue the trend and give you guys the latest reviews. That's where we're at now. It's like we're all in phase 2, and we've been doing phase 2 comics as they've been coming out, which I feel is pretty sweet that we're not sitting on any content, that we can get the latest and greatest out to everybody ahead of time. But it's been awesome. It's been great. Mike and I were in Anaheim. We were pretty much always hanging out. Like we were like, Mike would, I remember it was like I was late for Tamora Morrison's photo op, Tamora Morrison's photo op, and it was after dark at Disney, and Mike waited. Like he didn't have to. I'm like, Mike, I'll walk over, I'm good. Like I walk out and Mike's still sitting there. I'm like, Mike, you didn't have to wait. But it's just the kind of guy Mike is, and I've loved getting to know him and Jonathan, and so the three of us been doing that. Lakota's obviously not doing it now, but it was great getting to chat with her as well there at the beginning. So yeah, it's awesome. I know 2023 we're going to continue with the High Republic. We're probably going to expand a little bit. I think maybe get into the Yoda comic, and anything else that's related to Project Luminous is probably going to be reviewed. It's just fantastic content.
So
and I'd like to add, let me add to this. The one thing, like Bryce mentioned about how, if you read just the High Republic comic series, you get a full story. That's absolutely true. But one thing I really loved about it is when there would be certain panels. I'd say, hey guys, this panel, this is what was happening when this happened in that novel over there. And I'd go back and reread the book, like, oh yeah, because you would get the same scene from a different perspective, from a certain point of view, to quote Obi-Wan. Because in the novel, you would see it from like one Jedi's perspective. And then in a junior novel, you would get it from like the Padawan's perspective. And then in the comics, you would get it from somebody else's perspective walking by. And then what were those series, like the little knockoff series that were about the 5 issues, like Bryce, what was it? The mystery one.
Oh, Trail of Shadows.
Yeah, so in Trail of Shadows, it's really like a side story. It's kind of like the Jeffersons, It's a little offshoot and from
We're moving on up.
Yeah.
To a
Jefferson's
deluxe apartment.
Yes, because they were like a little shoot off from another series. And so the thing is that they really were great on their own too. And so I'm dating myself. But those panels that connect to other things, like, oh, so if you do read everything, you do see how they're interconnected, and it makes it like a huge, huge story. Whereas if you just read the one, it's fine. So you can have 5-year-olds that are reading just the adventure series, and they're getting the full story, but they know everything that's going on within the wider big picture, but it's from their perspective. And so then when you read the adult novels, it's the same thing, just with a lot more sex in it. And then when you read the young adult novels, it's kind of like, hey, they're going through their puberty changes and they're growing. So it's very different, but very enjoyable. And that's why we read everything. We just love it all.
And just to keep that in mind, there's rumors there might be some sort of High Republic-esque involvement somewhere, maybe, who knows, somewhere. But I don't know, there's been rumors about that. I don't know anything about that. Do you, Gary?
Put him on the spot, why don't you?
No idea what you're talking about at all. Like, I genuinely don't. No.
That book looks very familiar.
Fantastic.
It is quite familiar, isn't
it? Thank you very much for that. I tend to do that. I put people on the spot sometimes, Gary. Your eyes, deer headlights was fantastic. Thank you very much. But
yeah, and in closing, last thing. Bryce mentioned Light of the Jedi, and when I read that for the first time, all I thought in my mind was Towering Inferno. So just think Towering Inferno. Starts out
dating yourself, Mike.
I can't help it. I'm old. Jeff knows.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, guys. So 10-minute mark before tickets go on sale for Bunta. I just want to plug that real quickly. So make sure that you are tuned in to the Facebook page. So finally, before we go into the best of StarWars.com 2022, we're going to talk a little bit about the watch-alongs. Now, we were commenting the other night that we've not watched all 11 movies in quite some time because there's been so much content and build-up. It's been absolutely fantastic. The Darksaber series that we did, it was incredible. The Andor and then some that we encompassed the entire VCN was great. Gave a lot of content and behind the scenes of that. But we've had some incredible guests join us over the last year on the Virtual Cantina Network watch along. I mean, we've had our favorites like Misty Rosas. We've had Leilani Shu, our favorite. We've had Chris Bartlett. I would have to say a huge highlight for 2022 was ILM's Hal Hickel joining us to discuss The Mandalorian and Star Wars overall. I mean, Jeff, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, he was amazing. His insight into just, the production in general, not specifically to Mandalorian per se, but just overall was amazing to hear. And his stories were great. He was one of my favorite guests as well. That was an amazing episode. But all of the guests are great. Misty's fun. Chris is very insightful. Leilani is great to hear her talk about, the love of the crew and cast on the set and, of all the shows that they've been doing. So it's great that those people also get to kind of move through the shows on Disney Plus and have pieces and continue on with that kind of thing and not just be recast or whatever.
Plus, also, how was the creator of Jeff's favorite character in Star Wars?
I do enjoy me a droideka, but it was kind of cool to hear him talk about that whole process of trying to get that droid to sort of work on screen and how they fudged it here and there and stuff. So that was kind of cool.
We also had a great interview last week with Barry Lowen, who is a principal actor in Star Wars. He was absolutely fantastic. But what were some of your highlights? I know, Dave, I know that when Chris Bartlett started bringing out some of his costumes that he designed for like Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, your eyes were just like lighting up.
Oh, I've absolutely loved to see all of the different things that Chris Bartlett has done, and I love in general, like the fact that in the new Disney Plus series, you see a lot of the creators of the character stuff, the costuming and the effects. You know, the droid creators. You see, we've talked about this. We haven't, been lucky enough to have Carrie Jones on, but Carrie Jones, if you're listening, come. I've heard him at cons discussing, creating Black K, and now he's the actor for it. It's the same with Chris. You're doing those things. We were talking and asking Barry Lowen about, how you're creating this movement and how his performance is dictating how they're going to have to go and do the voiceover audio because of the way, he's moved in the Din Djarin suit and other creature characters that he's helped create and bring to life. So just all of those, and Misty as well was telling us all sorts of things that we had no idea and realized were practical. We're just like, oh, that's CG. Oh, that's CG. No, they just did that. And Misty and Barry and Leilani are telling us, no, that was real. That was on set. We were looking at that thing right there.
One of the things I loved last week was when we were getting the scene with Barry and talking about the clones in those tanks. And when we mentioned, I mentioned, it's like, oh, how interesting that they brought in Snoke's theme here. And he was like,
it is we get so much more insight into not just the story, but what's going on behind the scenes and the family that whole group of actors is becoming. It really kind of harkens, I think, to the stories that we've heard for a long time at this point about how close that Carrie and Harrison and Mark became during the filming and just kind of became that trio. Is it's really heartening to see that characters and actors from the new Disney properties are the same kind of family.
Yes, it's fantastic, and they're all traveling with each other, and they all seem to also talk about all wanting to be on the watch along, which is fantastic. When we were at Rhode Island Comic Con, each of the actors was like, "Oh, you do that show? Yeah, we want to be on that." One actress was like, looking to her agents, like, "Can we hook up with this one other guy and we do it together for one?" So it's very nice. But I'm going to make an announcement right now, which is actually probably, we have a lot of lineup for the rest of the March to Mando 3. But in February, when we start to do the Book of Boba Fett element of March to Mando 3, we're going to have a very special duo join us. Straight from the Coven, we are going to have Tate Fletcher and the Return of Emily Swallow on one episode of our watch along, talking about Paz Vizsla and the Armorer together in that incredible episode of the Book of Boba Fett. Especially their scenes were incredible. I actually have a autographed picture of Tate holding the Darksaber and Emily holding the Darksaber, so I'm pretty excited about that. We got tickets going on sale in just 1 minute. Very, very excited about that. But we got a lot of great things coming up on the virtual Cantina watch along. Join us on Tuesday nights for Shenanigans Abound. Maybe some after hours action, talk about pop culture, talking about, yes, Jeff brings out some of the after the last one, Dave, I got so high off on paint fumes, I went out and bought these.
There we go.
There's my.
That one got some extra work.
My
I'm
personal
sorry
favorite.
I had to work.
But we're
So
very
sorry I
excited
had to
about
work.
that. And ladies and gentlemen, it is 12 o'clock. The link is live on our Facebook
Woo!
page. Buy
Go
your
get 'em.
tickets now.
Hey, and somebody's showing up. Perfect timing.
Look at there.
It's Wilson.
Hey!
It's Wilson.
Hey.
Catherine's here.
We got Cat Dress. Thank you for joining us, Cat. Nice to see you.
Hi,
Joe.
Cat.
Hey, Kath.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
And with that, while we are getting ready for tickets going on sale, we are going to start the StarWars.com review of the best of 2022 and throwing our own little spins to it. So our host for this segment is Mr. Mark. Mark, take it away.
All right,
Yay.
Spencer. Good luck with ticket sales. Everyone who's still with us, you can buy and listen at the same time. What I think we're going to do, and does someone have the link that we can drop into the chat for everyone? I would like to have people be able to like click in and see as we're scrolling through. StarWars.com put together a best of. It is really just a comprehensive list of everything they did in 2022. So I think we're going to use that as our template to run through. It is chronological for the most part. And then we'll just dive in. And I think each show will give a chance to pick one they really like and want to talk about. That way, because I think we all sort of feel good in general about all the projects that are happening, but maybe there's something you're really passionate about. We'll start that way. The first up chronologically in 2022 was another live action series that actually came out at the end of 2021. It's Book of Boba Fett. This ran for like 8 episodes, had a big Mandalorian crossover. Luke Skywalker returns, Ahsoka Tano returns, Baby Grogu returns. We got a Rancor, we get some Hutts. We got a lot of everything. Tamora Morrison was great. Ming-Na Wen was amazing. And it kicks off the year, I think, in a big way. Love it or hate it, right? So who has strong feelings about Boba Fett? And again, we're staying in the positivity realm. Who wants to say something great about Book of Boba Fett and what you liked most about it? Crickets.
I'll jump in.
Go.
Okay. All right.
I'll
Take it
go.
away.
So I really
Go
loved.
ahead, Mike. Go, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
Do it.
Okay, I'll go first. Then Bryce. So I really loved bringing in Book of Boba Fett did a really good job of connecting out all the little tendrils or branches because it brought us in a lot of characters that we're familiar with from other shows. And I really, really enjoyed that a lot because I like seeing a live series. For example, what's the guy with the big hat?
Cad Bane.
Cad Bane.
Cad Bane, yes.
Yeah.
So if you know me, you know I'm really get tongue tied, but I know what I'm talking about. I just can't get the words at the moment because I get all tongue tied. So I could never be on a game show. But yeah, Cad Bane Cad Bane is one example. Kersantin, another example. You know, the Hutt twins. I mean, all these just fantastic things. I mean, and having Fwip, Garza Fwip. Fantastic, because you know I'm a big Flashdance fan. So to have her come in, loved it. Shut up.
No.
We love Jennifer Beals.
Oh, yeah.
I love Jennifer Beals, loved her, and I refuse to believe she's dead because there was no body, so she survived.
She and
Her
Max Rebo
That's
are in
fair.
it
and
together.
Max Rebo are still alive.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hold out that hope.
Well,
Max.
he
They're
wasn't there that day
terrorists,
though.
clearly.
He wasn't there the day that
They're
the
on the
bomb
run.
came in though. So Max Rebo wasn't in there the day that the bomb came in.
Yeah,
Remember?
he's
He
definitely
took that
alive.
day off, so he's a survivor.
Yeah, he's
They told
the
him to stay home.
mastermind, is what he is. It was
Yeah.
Max Rebo and Jennifer Beals who blew up that place to gain sympathy to help Boba and everyone. Everyone else was collateral damage, man. But that's another show we
Absolutely,
could do.
absolutely.
Messed up conspiracy theories within Star Wars. Max Rebo
All
and
done
Jennifer
for
Beals on the
insurance
run.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Book of Boba Fett was, we'll say, uneven, I think is how people have sort of talked about the show. The structure was weird. And I think it suffers from, and I mentioned this on Rebels Revisited, expectations versus what was given. So people think that Boba Fett is a particular character, right? He's a bounty hunter, and they really thought we were going to get Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, as opposed to post Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, as if there's no character progression within this man over the course of 20-something years after being thrown into the belly of like a desert monster hole. Right, that would change me. So his personality changed tremendously, and it gave us a very different take on the character. And I think that's what people were like not ready for, right?
And as I said on Monday, like the thing that I love most about Book of Boba Fett is they took these savages, these sand people, and the Tusken Raiders, and they gave them humanity. They gave them a language. They gave them a family, a sense of life. And I thought that was extremely beneficial to kind of fleshing out the world as a whole. And I absolutely love that Troy Kozor and everybody who got the language down. That was amazing. And there were some really good opportunities between Luke and Grogu, and to see how Grogu had progressed as a Padawan. And it wasn't long enough. I kind of wish we had a little bit more, but it was cool to see.
We are 25% sold out already of Bunta. We are
Already?
25% and
Woo!
rising fast. So buy your tickets now.
Oh, wow.
They are selling.
Buy
really
your
quickly.
tickets
I
now.
started-
Tell your friends to buy your tickets now.
Yes.
So
So
if
buy
you're-
them. Buy.
Yeah, if you're going to Celebration, you got to go to Bunta. I will say, like, this
You're,
my
you're
first
already going to
Bunta
be in
was
town.
Yeah, if you're already going to be
Yeah.
in, another continent, if you've decided to make the trip to Europe, I had such a blast at Bunta 2022.
Yeah.
It was my first time attending, and it was phenomenal. I thought
So
there were
fun.
things that happened there that was better than actually at Celebration.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it was really fun and community filled, and the actors you guys brought in to hang out and host and everything was a great
And we
time.
want to see your pictures. We want to live vicariously through you.
Oh yeah, people should put
Yes.
pictures. We should do like a big photo
Those
album
of
or
us
something
that
like that.
won't be in attendance.
Yeah.
Yes.
So give us FOMO. Come on.
Yes.
Mhm.
And for anyone stateside, we might have an announcement about that at some point. We'll talk about that another time. All right. We have a big list to go through. So Book of Boba Fett. Can we do a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways from like the crew? Like, what does everyone think about this? I'm going to give it a sideways.
Last thing I want to say about Book of Boba Fett is I think that people weren't ready for the Book of Boba Fett wasn't going to only be about Boba Fett.
It's about
You know-
Snuffleupagus.
Yes. No, but Andor did it so much better
Yeah,
that
agreed.
Yeah.
Andor was the title character, but he was not in every shot. He was not in every scene. It was telling the story about a multitude of people.
Mhm.
Boba Fett did the same thing, but we weren't ready for it.
To say that,
there were all of those great things that we were talking about. Yes, there were the bad things that I will not mention here. But we weren't ready for it.
Andor at least was in every episode, unlike Boba Fett.
Mm.
He got to be in the flashback for an episode. That was not counting as being in the episode
Mando
show that bears his name. So
2.5.
that was a little weird.
Positive talk.
Yeah. Okay. So Book of Boba Fett. I'm going to do a sideways. All right. I feel like there's a lot of sideways in the mix.
I'm a
Give it
little bit
thumbs up.
higher than sideways.
All right.
look
All
at
right, Kat. I get it.
Cat's got 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, I understand. And that brings us back to the next live action show, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think the show actually has a little bit in common with Boba Fett in that the title character has so many expectations going in that it's easy to disappoint.
Oh,
I
no,
see the
she's-
thumbs down coming.
More than a thumb down.
I get it.
it.
I totally get it.
Like a hand signal.
I am not as negative about this show as a lot of other fandom on Twitter is, but I'm also not in love with this show the way the other side of this fandom is now. Ashley, I know you love Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I do.
Yeah. And who else? Who's in the love bucket? Who loved Obi-Wan Kenobi? All right.
Yeah, thanks,
Well,
guys.
parts to it.
Gary,
Parts
do you
of it
want
for
to
sure.
jump
Yes.
in? Tell us what you loved about Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I think for me, it was the unexpected way that they did it. The way I sort of described it was I questioned the execution, but I think we got there in the end. And I think the series was summed up for me when everyone's familiar with scene with, let's say, the out of work clone trooper.
Mm.
And that was, I think that really hit home for me in the sense that here we have something that had like a true real world application, that here you have this individual who is trained, programmed for one specific thing. And when you take that away, what is left over? And I think it was interesting in that the same could be said about Obi, in that here you have taken away everything that he knew, this life that he had from the beginning. And it was a complete 360 on what I sort of expected. I was sort of expecting us to see the wise cracking, suave Kenobi that we would have been used to and expected. But I think it was a nice mix of everything in that we got to see some real old school Star Wars themes. And what hit for me as well was having him and Hayden back. Now, was Hayden underutilized? Is that maybe one of the main criticisms that we can give this? However, as a prop maker and costume builder, for which myself and Mark will hopefully have a chat about at some point. The setup was just phenomenal. I mean, everything from the physical sets to the VFX, it was incredible. And that scene, how long have we been crying out for Vader and Obi to actually square off, where we finally learned that Anakin was put in his place and that Obi-Wan was the one to truly put in there. Everyone remembers that line of I was but the student and now effectively I'm the master. Well, that was turned on its head. What I was curious actually to get people's thoughts about was the soundtrack for Obi-Wan disappointing, or was it that Ludwig had done such an incredible job with Mando that it maybe didn't live up to the expectations?
I want to
Ludwig
hear Kat's view on this one.
You're on mute, Kat.
Oh, muted.
Uh-oh, get that fixed. Still muted.
And by the way, we're 50% sold out.
Oh my
Are
God,
we?
no way.
Yay!
Wow.
How is that even
Woohoo!
possible?
This
That's
is the Taylor
fast.
Swift situation all over again.
Hope people don't sleep on New Year's Day
Yeah.
trying to get tickets and
We're now a $5,000 ticket
Well-
here.
While we're waiting for Kat to burn the show to the ground, let's continue in the love bucket. I'll go to Ashley and then Dave. So Ashley, I know you loved Obi-Wan. I want to see you and Kat duke it out later, but tell us what you loved most about Obi-Wan.
No, I really liked that they gave Obi-Wan, he went through a sense of emptiness and purpose because he felt like he was responsible for the death of his friend and just completely the destruction of the Jedi Order, everything. And he's carrying that weight, and it's kind of sad because it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, as Carrie Fisher would say. So he has all this grief and this guilt and this sadness weighing him down, and he's closed himself off from this Force. He's in this really dark place. But then once he finally faces off with Vader and sees that Anakin is gone, like there's nothing left, there's nothing he can save, there's no point in carrying on all this guilt, and there's the future to worry about with both little Leia and Luke. It gives him hope, and it kind of allows him to reconnect with the Force, and ultimately having Qui-Gon come back was kind of expected, but still really awesome to see. They definitely didn't drop the ball on that, in my opinion. But Vivian, Lyra Blair, Grant, phenomenal kids. They did such a great job giving us a look at the characters, Luke and Leia, as kids, and still staying in the vein of what Carrie would be like as a child.
precocious.
Yes, precocious, fun, snarky, sneaky. Loved it. So
And not in a way that like all these damn precocious kids in every movie get annoying. Like I
Yeah.
was never annoyed with Leia. I was like, oh, this tracks.
No.
Like, yeah.
she had a grace to her that was like beyond her years, but she also wasn't afraid to tell off those older boys. So
Yeah.
it was pure Carrie, and I thought they did such a good job of remembering all the lessons that Carrie said in both on screen and off screen as Leia. So
Yeah.
loved it.
Dave, what did you love most about Obi-Wan?
So everybody in the room knows that I had like a moment with Ewan McGregor at Celebration, and so by the time the Obi-Wan show came out, I was like, is it on yet? Is it there? So I could not love that. I don't get me wrong, I had some issues with the production and things that kind of cheaped out on, but by the time that they had paid Ewan and Hayden a gazillion dollars, I understood why it was that way. But yeah, I really enjoyed that play back and forth between Obi-Wan and Anakin, as I had been a huge fan of the Obi-Wan audio drama, and I think that this didn't tell us the events of that, but lived up to a lot of the way Obi-Wan was in that place, and you had seen a lot of that. So I think it incorporated a lot of good things that we'd already seen and a lot of things we wanted. Yes, I think that the Inquisitor bit was probably kind of a bit. I really think some of the rumors may be true that they had this designed for Maul, like we would have seen in Rebels, and then they backed off of it. I think that may have happened, but that didn't decrease from my love of it, because we'd already seen that was done to perfection in animation. We did not need it in live action because it would have probably ruined it. But
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, loved seeing Ewan and Hayden on screen again, and that Vader Obi-Wan matchup.
I agree. That was exciting to see. I do think the shortcomings for me overtook the things that I was excited about. I think, Kat, you're probably in a similar bucket. Do you want to give your critique of the show? What didn't work for you? Like, what was the thing that, like, I was calling it a missed opportunity for the longest time. I'd love to get your take.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking good.
All right. So nothing was working in this show. I felt it was all plot and no story. And I think the root of all the problems is the idea that, well, if we can get Ewan and Hayden can come back, that'll fix everything. And you had one of the writers boasting that they hadn't even bothered watching Revenge of the Sith before writing it. I'm like, what are you doing? And it's like, it's not even consistent with the journals of Ben Kenobi in the new canon, where we saw that even though he was in hiding, he's still trying to uphold his Jedi mandate. He hasn't given up hope on everything. And yet, even in the first episode, he's this kind of, this Jedi's coming for his help, make sure to get him out somewhere in the, out in the desert away where nobody's spying on him. And Obi-Wan just totally drops him like a rock. And it's like, okay, like, what's this about? And, Bail Organa was there when Yoda gave them, the mission, you got to protect these kids. So why is he asking Obi-Wan to, leave Luke behind to go find Leia? It's like, you're a well-respected senator in the Empire still. Go get Tarkin to take care of it. He'll have the whole Imperial fleet. It's like a kidnapped Imperial senator's daughter. Man, they're all going to be on that, and moments which I figured should have been really big, like the moment when he finds out that Vader lived, and imagine the survivor's guilt he would be living with that, or having to fight the impetus to go out and finish the job. And it's like, it just felt like they wanted to tell some zippy, fun story, and like with you have people complain about things like, oh, the gate in the desert, or the hiding under the cloak in the Imperial. I didn't really mind that stuff as much. I'm like, yeah, it was silly, but there wasn't really much of a story. It's like, why is Leia even here? If you want to do a young Leia series, go for it. It would be great to channel Carrie with that. You could have it be like a show taking place over a number of years. You have multiple actresses as she's getting older. That'd be fantastic. Like, draw upon the Princess Leia novel that Claudia Gray wrote. It'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
But
I love that idea, by the way. You should pitch that.
Yeah, and it's like, why is she in this series? And it's just kind of being this precocious little kid, and it doesn't really have anything to do with Obi-Wan. The Reva character was just atrociously written. It's like, Vader was not in the mood for sparing fools during Order 66. And her whole spiel that, well, I've been hunting Obi-Wan for 10 years so I can, because that'll get me to Vader. And I'm like, in the Rebels series, it's already been established that the Inquisitors have Vader's respect. He can get in there. She can make up any lie she wants to get in the room. And it's like, you're literally about to torture a child for information about this rebel path, which is not going to get you any closer to Vader and Obi-Wan. And then in the next episode, she's like, oh, I'm depressed. Blah, blah. It's like, I didn't know what they were doing with that. And her whole deal of going after Luke at that point didn't really make any sense. It's like, well, Vader's already dropped you like a rock. He's already said he knows who you are. So why are you going after Luke? And it just seemed like it was a story, or again, not a story. It's just, let's have all these characters just coming together for the hell of it. And the idea that Obi-Wan would once again leave Vader at the end of a duel where he's once again beaten him. It's like, no. It's like, we get why he left him at Mustafar. He thought he was justified in thinking Vader was going to die. But now that he knows everything that he's done, then why are you writing him into a scenario where he has the opportunity to finish the job again, and he just walks away in a much less intense situation, like just in the desert? It's like, again, it's like blood. It's like, I don't get it. It's like, and great that they got Hayden to come back. He's a great team player. I love that. But they didn't really, I mean, yeah, he's in the suit most of the time, other than that one flashback. It's like, okay, I just feel they could have, they didn't really, like, should have drawn more from like the journals of Ben Kenobi and the things that's been established in war already than what they did. I don't think I'm going to watch it again. I mean, I think that's fair. Ewan McGregor was very good though.
Yeah,
he brought his A game.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point that they overlook the books. And I think this is a trend we're going to see as we go through all of the content that's coming out now for streaming and for movies, where for a while, and you guys talked about this, the books were holding up the franchise for a very long time. And in the new canon, all books are supposed to be canon. And yet we are seeing contradictions. We see it in Bad Batch. We see it in Tales of the Jedi. We saw it in a big way in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and I agree with you that these are problems. So I think these are things that are hard to get over. I think with the fans, like what is more canon than other things? Like are movies at the top and TV next, and then we can just erase books when we disagree with something. It seems like we're going down that path, and I don't like that path. I also think the missed opportunities, like you said, why'd we bring back Hayden if he's barely in it? They pump that up a lot in the press. Hayden's back. He's got one scene where he's in his flashback Jedi outfit, and the rest of the time he's in the suit. And most of that time it's probably just his voice, which is already modulated through the James Earl Jones robo machine. So you know what I mean? Like it just missed opportunity is how I felt about it. I think Bryce or Mike, you wanted to jump in as well on Obi-Wan, and then we're going to close the book on Obi-Wan and move to Andor, which I'm very excited to get this group talking about because I know that I think that one is one we all agree on. We loved. So Mike and Bryce, do you want to close out Obi-Wan?
Just really quickly, I wanted to say that it's a big mistake for them not to be reading the material. Because it's a big missed opportunity. Because here you have stuff that is proven to be successful and accepted and loved, and yet they're totally missing it. And I thought the whole point was for Disney to decant or to turn EU into Legends, was because from starting with Disney, everything would be canon, and I was fine with that, But now there are more contradictions in just this short amount of time than we ever had with the EU. With decades of information.
I disagree with that, but I agree there are a lot of contradictions.
But the path that it's taking would have a lot more contradictions than we ever had in the EU.
I honestly think the contradictions are relatively minor, but the path they've carved, where they're now trying to fill in and overstuff every section. Like you can't have an adventure every single day of the year. And I think with the comics, when they're trying to fill in between like A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, like, yes, there's a path to get us from like Yavin to Hoth, but were you really that busy every damn day? Like we're running out of days. Like that's the hard part. I think they're stuffing the same blocks of time over and over again to unbelievable quantities, and that's where you get the contradictions rolling in, and it's hard to keep track. Like I can't keep track, and I'm a licensee. Thank God I'm not a storytelling licensee anymore. Like when I was on the top side, we had to worry about what the cards were saying. I'm making costumes, like they just have to be accurate. I don't have to worry about like, does it contradict with some other story that's happening? Because it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. I do want to close the page on Obi-Wan. I do want to say one big shout out though to Bonnie Piez as Aunt Beru. I think we all became team members of like Team Beru crew. She for me was the MVP of this series. Very unexpectedly, loved it.
Agreed.
And we got to meet her at Rhode Island Comic Con. Many of us. That was very cool. All right, let's jump into the third live action show of the year, which is the most recent. And I know there might be some recency bias, but I think all of us agree that Andor was phenomenal. Who loved Andor? Hands up. Did anyone not like Andor, or does someone want to start with like what they thought didn't work on Andor, and then we can all sort of go around and say what we liked best about it?
Why they didn't say F the Empire? I don't know.
Yeah.
My biggest issue in Andor, along with Obi-Wan, was the lack of alien species that are not Terran.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We see, especially in like a facility like that, the jail, that you would think there would be such a broader spectrum of species, housed there, and the cityscapes, walking around. We got a handful of great characters, but we didn't get like the peppering in of the background of, characters, Jawas, weird aliens, whatever, as we've had in other shows. The Mandalorian does a pretty good job. So that was one of my main issues with that and Obi-Wan.
I heard an in-universe answer to this, because I think that's a common complaint across Star Wars Twitter and YouTube. They were saying that if you're on Coruscant, humanoids, people, who look like Earthlings are the ones who make all the decisions and run everything, and all the other alien species are considered like inferior in some form. And so, of course, they're the ones who are in the hub of power and the ones who have all of the jobs in the imperial, white collar type facilities. And the second beat to that with the prison was they took all men and humanoid men because the machinery worked for their it was designed around our physiology. And I was like, oh, those are good in-universe answers. I like that. However, I still want to see more aliens. So
Especially
great answer. But
the
like
street scenes.
And we know the real world answer, which is probably
money.
Money.
Yeah. I'm good with all those
fine.
answers. It's like in The Last Jedi in the throne room scene. She dropped the dagger. It didn't magically disappear in the bad special effects. Great fight scene. That you dropped it. Big deal.
She made it disappear with the Force. That's what she did.
The Force can do everything now. It's kind of, and that's actually another thing. Yeah, look, I my feeling is Star Wars, you sort of have to suspend your disbelief in a variety of ways. Like, all of these people can't know each other. Like, I talk about it all the time, billions of people in the galaxy. How the hell is Han Solo shooting at Vader in the trench run, and he's got like R2 and C-3PO and Han and Leia, and they all know each other, all from the same damn family. Like, this is ridiculous. But you roll with it. We love it. All right, who wants to talk about what they loved best about Andor? And lack of aliens notwithstanding. All right, well, let Spencer go, because I know you're monitoring ticket sales like a fiend.
Yes, so it's doing very well. We have 131 to add 250 tickets sold.
Wow.
Very excited about that. But this is something that we actually talked about quite a bit on the virtual cantina since we had the inception. And this was actually a quote from Kat over there, is that we are ready for a Dunkirk, gritty, dirty Star Wars. So we are ready for an adult-oriented Star Wars. When we got this, like, in abundance, like completely, like, it was exactly what I think, in my humble opinion, the enlightened adult Star Wars fan that's been a fan since 77 has been waiting for, that we've been waiting for, not just the kids' story, which we grown up and loved, but the dirty grime of corruption and war and espionage. And and plus also, this was the first show that was non-Star Wars saga based. So we walked in with no preconceived notion other than we knew that Cassian Andor was showing up and Mon Mothma was showing up, and we saw in the trailer that we were going to get a Saw Gerrera appearance. But that's all we knew. Like, heart-wrenching, some incredible acting, some incredible writing, the build-up, the music to end up being the Death March at the end. For Marva, it was just like, it's just everything. I'm a fan of the slow build. I like the slow burn. And to me, it kept me wanting to come back and not just watch it because it was Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It was Star Wars in real life. I keep on harkening back to the fact that I love Attack of the Clones because of the Dex Diner scene, because it was Obi-Wan at a diner. This is outside of the realm of a Jedi fighting. And now we're going even the lower level. We're talking about, 1313 underworld type stuff. So to me, Andor just hit it on every single level. What was your thoughts, Gary? Especially with, and now I want to hear Gary. I also want to hear Gio. This was filmed over in the UK. So this is like, a lot of people said this is a quintessential UK production and show. So Gary, why don't you start with that one? Mike.
Oh,
there we go. Sorry. The one thing I think I'd say out front, and I'm hoping Mr. Van Olen would agree with me here, being from the prop maker and the physical side of things, that the non-use of stagecraft was an enormous ballsy decision, in that trying to keep everything physical and in the now. That was a really, really gutsy move, and it did pay off. I think obviously building on the success of Rogue One, we were always wanting more at the back of our mind, going, we would love to see something as close stylistically to Rogue One as we got it. The one thing that I think was genius, and it was something that I suppose I never really thought of, was that having the ISB be front and center of a series. The reaction to Krennic, everyone remembers in 2016 when Mendo came out dressed as Orson Krennic, and it left us wanting more from this character and the ISB. So I think it pulled the curtain back a little bit more on the real propaganda machine and the true purpose of what the ISB actually are, in that they are, I almost described it as a quick reaction force for control measures, in that something happens outside the realm of control and they act immediately. And it was nice to see from that perspective. But I think the biggest shocker for me, and it's something that I'm going to get printed on a t-shirt for Celebration, is Andor shot first. That's my take on it. Cassian shot first. I thought that was such a nice parallel, in that when he's in that situation, bang, didn't even think twice. Whereas there's not going to be any debate over this. It is set in stone. Cassian was in that situation, and Andor shot first. So I think that was such a nice parallel to Han.
Yeah.
No,
sure.
Gary, I think you gave a good idea, and I don't think you're going to have to make that shirt, because I think that it's a great idea.
May show up elsewhere.
Yeah.
And just to add, the ISB has always been in the print material, in books, so a lot. So it's nothing new for us readers. And then also in Rebels, we had the ISB a lot. So all those, me, I love all those connections, brings everything tighter, closer together. But for those of us that have been reading, it's like, oh yes, it's another one for us. But if you just watch the movies, you're gonna like, that's not Star Wars. But for those of us that read, it certainly is most
watch
definitely
Rebels,
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was really the big question all over Star Wars YouTube and Twitter. Like, was this Star Wars? Did this feel like Star Wars? Because weirdly enough, as much as I think all of us love this show, the ratings were the lowest out of the three. And that's actually not surprising to me, because like Cassian Andor doesn't have the same name recognition as Boba Fett or Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, and no one really knew what the show is about. Like, you're talking about the third build character from Rogue One, and then Mon Mothma. 90 seconds of Return of the Jedi if you've only watched the movies, right? Like, you got nothing else. So I get why this would have been a tighter audience, which is why I think also like the fandom really rallied behind it, and they were like, no, this is good. Gio, what were your thoughts on this? I know you haven't jumped in yet on this one.
Sure. I think it's a fantastic combination of everything that's been going well for Star Wars in the saga, and since Disney's done their take on things, all the criticisms I think we've discussed about the possible drawbacks of, say, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show or the Book of Boba Fett are seemingly addressed in Andor. The fact that you've got just this slick storytelling rather than just plotting forward from action set piece to set piece, as we saw in Obi-Wan. This kind of awkward, uneven juggling of characters that we took away from maybe some audience expectation with the Book of Boba Fett, as well as just being narratively a little zigzaggy. Andor had this very clear through line from the beginning. So I think across the board, it's a triumph for Star Wars and for, I think, streaming TV shows. I genuinely feel that it's one of the strongest streaming shows in the streaming era. And I think it works as a fantastic independent show. It doesn't require you to have incredible knowledge of Star Wars. I think you can, and it can kind of sound like I might be making justifications here, but the fact that there aren't so many of the Star Warsian elements, the aliens, those sorts of things, the very aesthetics that make Star Wars look like Star Wars, I think is sometimes what people end up hanging their definition of Star Wars to be on. But it's a lot more than that. It's a lot wider, it's a lot deeper, and it's a lot more personal. And I think having a greater number of voices working behind the scenes has really paid off in this sense. So I think, across the board, in terms of production level, narratively, just the technicalities, like the props and the costumes, as Gary's mentioned, and I think and to Spencer's original question about locations, I'm completely there in the fact that I was just in awe in the first episode, just taking in how immersive and evocative it felt. And that is really because I think of the directing and editing skill, the acting, the dialogue being realistic and not too hokey. And it's fine to have like cheesy moments and moments of levity. And I think when we looked at Rogue One in the lead up to Andor, one thing from our conversation, Unifying Force, we came out with is that Rogue One had some balance and had moments of humor in it, but overall it gives you that kind of on the boots, gritty, real world war feel. And Andor took that and then, like did laps and laps around the field with that same baton. And I think it really showed. I just hope that the lack of the perceived audience at the moment isn't something that deters the Star Wars team and Lucasfilm generally from allowing this kind of storytelling to happen, because it's by far the strongest storytelling that Disney's put out for a long time. And it's also gives a great jumping off point for many other aspects of Star Wars to literally expand the universe again and make it not just this kind of very small knit group of everyone who knows each other. I think one of the biggest aspects of Star Wars that can make it grow is the fact that you have an entire galaxy. So let's see more of it. And Andor's fascinating in that thematically it expands in every sense, and yet it's still pitched in that kind of dark era of the Empire, which shows that there's so many things that can be done with Star Wars if you have a plan and you've got a lot of ideas around and someone with a specific vision to take things forward, and not just kind of ticking boxes to like sell merch and flog stuff with the fans. And okay, we need to get this quadrant in to get the kids of this age to factor into the film or the TV series. Andor had so many things going for it. And I feel like we could all keep talking about it because it hits on so many levels.
So I want to actually I'm sorry to interrupt. One of the things I hearkened to was a quote from Kat from 2.5 years ago that were right for a Dunkirk type Greece Star Wars. Let's go over to Kat, and see what her impression was about Andor. It was, did this live up to what she wanted in Star Wars?
I think it lives up to what Gareth Edwards originally said that Rogue One was going to be at Celebration Anaheim in 2015. He said it was going to be a really nitty gritty, rough, down in the trenches, dirty type of war movie. And then it wasn't. I like Rogue One, but it sort of has it shares a lot with A New Hope in terms of, scrappy band of misfits coming together to save the galaxy. Whereas Andor is really not that. I mean, they set that up. They make that clear in the very first scene, which opens in a brothel, which is like, wow, it's like Star Wars going places. And how Andor just kind of really callously just murders those guys outside they're kind of being jerks to him, but it's like, really, you're going to just shoot this guy? It's like, okay. And it tells you that this is not you're going to be your regular, happy-go-lucky Star Wars story. And I love that that Lucasfilm is willing to do that. Like, on the one hand, you have stories like The Mandalorian, which are very episodic, built around cameos and a lot of fun fan service, but with some good story there as well. Whereas here, it's more about, okay, let's tell the story of how the rebellion got started. We don't need Jedi or Sith. We don't need Inquisitors. Just like again, it feels like an actual war movie or espionage story. And unlike the Book of Boba Fett, where they just kind of stops telling his story over 2/3 of the way through to go do the Grogu Luke thing, which didn't really have any relationship there. Here, all the different characters are interconnected in some way. Some of them very closely connected, others not so much, but it felt a lot more natural when they kept jumping to different storylines than in, say, Book of Boba Fett. And I loved the amount of time they spent on character development. I know a lot of people didn't like the first 2 episodes. I liked them a lot. I think the first 3 flows really well. And overall, I love the series. I mean, I wasn't crazy about the finale because, usually in a long form series, while plot lines and character arcs continue through multiple seasons, you still feel like at the end of the season, you've told a complete story. And I didn't feel they really did that with this. Like, there's a lot of lingering things still associated with Marva, even that didn't really get resolved. Like Marva being petrified that the authorities would find out where Andor was from. What exactly was going on in Andor's homeworld? Who is Andor's sister? What's that about? Which kind of was teased in the beginning, and then they just kind of dropped that plot the rest of the way. Or like the Mon Mothma plot, they just keep layering the tension and layering it. But I didn't feel it really hit its crescendo yet. So I really look forward to season 2. And I really hope that they continue doing stories like this and don't let the ratings dissuade them, because I think it was fantastic. I love that they didn't use the volume as much because Kenobi, the visual effects industry has been under a lot of strain, and I think that showed a lot in Kenobi, where you could tell it wasn't the volume at its best like it was in Mandalorian. Like you could really tell a lot more with the CG, whereas here it just looked fabulous. And I really can't wait to see the next season. Really good series.
Yeah, I'm also very excited about Andor season 2, which I guess we're getting in 2024, so a year away, which is great that we're in 2023 now. I think across the board, all of us are saying thumbs up on Andor, or 2 thumbs up. I would give it 2. My only final thought on that is I agree that with this type of storytelling, I hope that product doesn't become, or ratings or whatever doesn't become an issue for Lucasfilm, where that they rejigger based on ratings. I keep thinking of that one meme that's all over the internet. Have you seen this? The YouTuber guy who says, what's the phrase? Don't ask questions, just consume product and then get excited for next product. You guys must have all seen that, right? He's one of my favorites. He's saying it in jest, obviously, but like, doesn't that sum up everything happening right now across all of the fandoms? And I feel like Andor is an outlier to that. Like there's almost no Andor product, and
I'm really hoping
great.
that they remember how much people loved Rogue One, even though it wasn't mainstream and it wasn't popular, and it probably wasn't the highest grossing Star Wars movie ever, but it had a niche in the fandom, and it was important to the fandom. And this has become the same way, if not more so than Rogue One was, like instantly with the fandom. Like the complaints are minimal, and
for the people who watched it,
for the people who actually watched it. So they're hoping the word of mouth will get out there, and by the time Celebration rolls around, people will be interested and want to see it.
I'm thinking if they did push product for Andor, we would buy it. There would be a market.
Well,
I mean,
it depends on, but children will not, and I think that's the big question, right? So I think this brings up the big question.
There he is, right
what
there.
Does fandom look like? You know, what is?
I need a little BD or B.
Yeah, that's cute. No, the BD droid is cute.
Oh, that's great.
He's one. There isn't like a lineup of Funko Pops for like, Deirdre and, Cyril, and, all of that, which, by the way, I would collect those too. Like
they could have them like a kissing scene, like Luke and Leia.
Oh, Lord.
They're coming though.
We could spend a day going through everything in Andor. I think all of us have done numerous shows on it, and I would just like to plug every show has done like a recap on Andor, and I've listened to all of them. They're all great. We did our whole countdown leading up to. There were weekly watch-alongs. There's no shortage of Andor content on the virtual Cantina. So if anyone has not watched the show yet, who's somehow watching this, check out Andor and then check out our wraparound. The next one up, the 4th show from Disney this year for Star Wars is Tales of the Jedi. And that one's pretty recent as well. And I would hardly call it a show. It's more of like a one-day event, almost like a special presentation. It was 6 mini shorts and ended up being about an hour and a half all in. 3 Ahsoka episodes, 3 Dooku episodes. For me, it was a little bit uneven. Does anyone love this series and want to jump in about what they liked, other than Spencer? And does anyone hate the series and want to talk about what they hated about it? Who loved it? Spencer, do you want to take it away on Tales of the Jedi? And then we'll kick over to Ashley.
I'll talk more involved about the Dooku lineup, but the fact that we found out more about Ahsoka, and obviously her childhood, and getting her, seeing that she, her family knows that she's going to be taken away eventually when they find out Jedi. And then you have the clip that goes directly into Clone Wars season 7. That if you're not, thinking about it, you're like, oh my God, like you're there. It was great. And seeing how she was able, to train, and how Anakin pushed her when, everybody else, hi Ahsoka.
She heard her name.
In training Ahsoka. But the Dooku arc, holy crap. Like the whole, they did a whole entire show on the unifying force on the, on the line of Dooku is a political idealist, is not a murderer. And then, sorry, Yaddle. Speaking of Yaddle, BDH, 2 enthusiastic thumbs up on that one. But the
Yaddle
whole
was great.
Dooku training Qui-Gon and having not only Liam Neeson, but his son, Michael Richardson, do the voices of Qui-Gon was just absolutely incredible. I mean, to me, Tales of the Jedi opened up they talked about quite a bit on other shows as well, opened up the realm for Tales of the Sith, other seasons. And to me, it was really the most, other than I would say Rebels and season 7 Clone Wars, the most pure Star Wars we've gotten at all, period. That's just, I mean, I loved it. Like, I loved everything about it.
Okay. Ashley liked it as well. Do you want to tell us what you loved about Tales of the Jedi?
I did. I really loved the fact that you got to see Dooku as a person outside of, like, oh, he was a Jedi and he went to the dark side and now he's an apprentice to Darth Sidious and he has to get out of the way so Anakin can rise up. And he's more than just a plot device in this. He's a Jedi master who's training his Padawan, who's trying to find ways around the strict rules of the Jedi to help people, to honestly help people who are in need. And you can kind of see that gray area that Qui-Gon is famous for, like not so bent in the rules with the Jedi and not so ingrained in the rules with the Jedi. But you see where Qui-Gon gets it from. And to have Dooku actually mourn Qui-Gon's death outside that tree in Coruscant, it was probably one of the most poignant things in Star Wars I've ever seen, where it's like, okay, this is what really like caused him to push away the ideals of the Jedi and go fully to the path to the dark side. And it's grief, it's loss, it's just amazing storytelling. And I did have some fun learning about Ahsoka and her childhood and how her people kind of saw it as like, oh, she's Jedi. Like it was kind of like a blessing and a curse at the same time, because it's this child that brought light to their tribe and to their people. But unfortunately, she couldn't stay with them because she's a Jedi and she had to go and be trained now. So, but to see her connection with the Force and with animals and stuff, that was really cool. Everything else I felt kind of retconned the books with Ahsoka, so I was kind of disappointed with that. It a lot along with like the LGBTQ things that they just kind of pushed aside. But overall, like I am so interested in seeing where else they could go with this, which characters they'll use, which timelines they'll play with. It'll be interesting, and you can tell they could do it right. It's just no more retconning things that are important to marginalized groups of people, please. Like that was my biggest about this. So
somebody had mentioned Pablo in the chat, and it's like they really need to find a consistency with keeping the continuity accurate and addressing the things that have come before, like the literature.
Right. And Pablo and Leland and everybody.
They really need to crack down on that whole aspect to keep things sort of not being redundant or wiping out some other element of a story in a different format because they're trying to move through this new show or whatever.
Right.
Ashley, and you know what? If I want to add though, the thing about the Jedi is, Dooku and Qui-Gon are very different from the Jedi that we're familiar with, but they actually have more in common with the Jedi of the High Republic. So if you look at them, because in the High Republic, the Jedi are much more diverse, and so they're more accepting of divergent thinking in the High Republic. So I think this bridges the decline of the Jedi into how they end up to what we consider to be normal is actually where they've come down from a different level. Right. And so I think that this really these episodes that highlight Dooku and Qui-Gon, they're showing how the Jedi have been transforming into a much more rigid view of what we're mostly familiar with. But in actuality, it's been the decline over centuries. And so when you read the High Republic, wait a minute, these Jedi are weird. They're hooking up left and right. They're, taking off when they want to. It's like, it's not the Jedi that we're familiar with. But I think that was for me, I saw that as a connection from the High Republic into what we're familiar with now.
Right.
Just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, the Dooku storytelling, that's why it was so phenomenal, because it gave you that layered aspect of the Jedi through history. There's different kinds of Jedi, but they all believe in what's good and what's right. It's just different ways of getting there. So
We also talked about the fact
So
that we finally found out who deleted
the archives.
Yeah, Camino.
Yes.
Camino from the
That,
Jedi
Yes.
Archive.
that all
Huge.
happened during
Mhm.
Phantom Menace and Clones. I mean, like that was one of the questions that we all wanted to know. Because obviously,
Again, did we?
librarian, it's like, it's not there.
We already knew it from the comics and the
I-
writing, so
That's a thing,
Yeah.
right? Like there I've seen a few of these, right? Like what happened to Yaddle? I never cared. By the way, I love the way they handled Yaddle. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a standout within this series. I actually feel about Tales of the Jedi the way that Kat feels about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Missed opportunity and a lot of like mistakes in production. Like the Ahsoka story completely contradicts the novel, which is a problem that we're seeing across numerous streams of content now because there's too much content. And the just like the Dooku stuff was great. The Ahsoka stuff was not. But I see a lot of potential for this series. I think you could do 100 of these with all the different Jedi and keep it rolling. And I like the art style, and I like the idea that these are little short, like digestible, like little chunks. Like keep doing them. Like give us a new one every month. Like we could have 12 Jedi by the end of the year. That would be phenomenal. And they don't necessarily need to go anywhere in particular. Like, I didn't think the Dooku stuff needed to line up with the movies or that it needed to explain why Yaddle isn't there anymore. Like that never mattered. It was more about what are we getting to the heart of Dooku? And I actually think I felt sympathetic for him for the first time. But that's also very Disney. Disney likes to make their villains sympathetic for no reason and when they don't need to. Like Cruella is a great example of that. Like all of their villains, they do that with. I'd rather sometimes just have bad people and bad villains and just evil people because they exist and they're terrible people. I don't need like to actually feel sympathy for them, but I like the way they did it for Dooku.
Right.
With that in mind, I know we're nearing the end. We have 10 minutes left. Do we
Kat-
want to? We've done all 4 of the shows, but we have the books. We talked a lot about the books already. Is there a pitch you guys want to do about the books? And then Spencer, you wanted
I
to
just felt
jump
like
in?
Kat looked like she wanted to comment on the.
Oh no, I agree with what Mark said. Like all the Dooku stuff reinforced what we already knew about him. He's right that Disney is on this trend where they're trying to like. Do we need movies like Cruella and stuff like that to humanize? Like, no, it's like we don't need that. And yeah, the Ahsoka stuff contradicting the books. It's like, come on, you made that series specifically for or those episodes specifically for Ahsoka fans who obviously read the book. So what are you
Exactly.
doing?
Yeah,
It's like,
why would they tread on that?
because casual fans who may not have read the book, yeah, they're fans of her from Clone Wars and Rebels and seeing her Mandalorian. I don't think casual fans aren't gonna run to watch those episodes. Like it's gonna be for diehard fans. So yeah, it's just
A lot of questionable decisions in
Well-
all the streams of content.
from lack
We're
of
kind of just
reading.
heading.
Well, that's
Yeah,
where they need to
it's-
have that continuity.
They
kind
need
of
to decide
in
what
check.
to do. Yeah, because
Yeah.
otherwise we're just getting to the EU again, and which is the reason why Disney tried to reject
Yeah.
it all and start anew. So
Well-
Right.
have some consistency. That's what we need.
Do we agree as a group that what suffered from the new trilogy and in general is Disney's lack of focus, not having a plan? And I think we're seeing it come to fruition right
That's
now
the
as they were
kind of
trying with COVID to just get things done. We need the Obi-Wan show done. We need the Boba Fett show done.
Yeah, it
you
was-
know, and then it's like, oh, we'll shoehorn Mando to help fix it. This animated series is going, do whatever. Like, because you do have to feed the beast, by the way. I work across various licenses at Ruby's, and DC suffering from this. You saw what happened with DC. The
Mhm.
train literally fell off the tracks. HBO Max is deleting content because they spent billions of dollars, right? Like they don't have a plan anymore. They fired everyone. James Gunn's in charge now. If you told me this like in like 2020, I would have been like, oh, you're nuts. Like February of 2020, you tell me that James Gunn is running DC and they canceled a movie with Michael Keaton in it, and The Rock's movie bombed, and Ben Affleck's fired, and Gal Gadot's fired, and no one's left. Like Shazam
Yeah.
is the last standing man. Shut the fuck up. Like there's no way.
Yeah.
Like all of that is crazy. So for me, like
Yeah.
just seeing the way
It is
that like
insanity, yeah.
fandom has changed in the last 3
And
years.
it comes from what we're talking about here, which is ignoring previous content that you have. Biggest
Yeah.
complaints about Justice League and Batman versus
Yeah.
Superman was there was an entire graphic novel that was well written, loved, been out forever. If you had just put that on the screen,
Yeah.
Proven
Yeah.
successful. Proven successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mean like
Okay,
that,
sure.
that
Read a book,
Batman
kids.
versus Superman movie that was
Yeah, but
we're
we
getting off,
discussed
we're
this.
getting
and
off
just-
topic.
But I think this is right on, right?
Yes.
Like pretend
No,
we're
it's
Bob,
relevant to it
we're
all.
Bob Iger now. Bob Chapek's gone. We're Bob Iger, the 9 of us here. what do we, or 10 of us here, what do we want to say to Star Wars in 2023? What is our wish? What is our hope? What is the one thing we want?
If I
Tear
could talk
down the
to
rest
Bob
of
Iger,
Hollywood Studios and make it all Batu.
Yeah.
I would tell Bob
Ooh.
Iger to slow down. I get you need to feed the beast, but it was
Yeah.
your mandate
Yeah.
to say that we're going to have a saga movie every odd numbered year and a spin-off movie every even numbered year that resulted in them not being able to have a single creative voice on the whole sequel trilogy because they couldn't, just because of that
Yeah.
schedule. And that's the
They
problem.
had to feed the shareholders.
Pump the
Yeah.
brakes.
Yeah,
pump
and
Pump the
that's,
brakes.
and that's why it fell in
Relax.
on itself.
They
So
couldn't stick to that either.
yeah,
This will be a question for another day, but I'm going to throw this out there to the group just to drop a bomb. Is Star Wars no longer special because there's too much of it?
No.
Right?
It's still special.
Like
It's
I,
It's still special.
yeah.
It's still special because here the thing is that when Disney bought Star Wars was extremely popular and it was already a cult classic. We all thought that it could never be as big as it is right now. And look where it is. And
Yeah.
it's still
Hmm.
that big.
Yeah, it made like $7 billion at the box office. Yeah. All right. Continuing that. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. 2023. What project is everyone each excited about? Just let's go around. We'll start at Kat and make our way counterclockwise from Kat, ending with Spencer. So let's do it that way. What's the thing you're most excited about in 2020 for 2023 Star Wars?
Mandalorian season 3.
All right, Gio,
Yeah, Mando season 3 as well.
Dave,
Ahsoka.
yep, Gary.
Jedi Survivor.
Ooh, good. Can you be our gamer? We actually need a gamer for the network. Let's talk after. Ashley.
I'm in on that. The gaming thing, I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that book too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, there's a book. Ashley.
Definitely Ahsoka. You know my Rebels love. Got to see those guys on the screen.
Yeah, I really want to see where Mando's going. And I've heard some things. We heard a little possible rumor about some character change tweaks, possibilities. So I'm really, stoked on seeing what happens with that. And
Oh boy,
Ahsoka should be amazing too. But Mando,
I'm
for
excited about that.
Spoiler
Mike,
alert. So for me, it's High Republic, the end of phase 2 and beginning of
Phase
phase
2.
3.
Yeah. Bryce.
I'm torn. Be honest with you, I'm leaning towards the Acolyte.
Oh, that's 2024. So you get to throw another one on there. Oh wait, is it 2024 or is it 23?
It should be this year.
Okay,
I
all right, very cool.
believe it's either the fall or December release of this year's what they're planning.
I know
It's this
Spencer's
year.
most,
It's this year.
Spencer's most pumped about Boon to Eve, and tickets are 80% sold out. Where are
We're
we?
close to 60.
Okay.
However, I would say besides Boon to Eve, if we're looking at our property, I'm going to put this over here because we got the World Between Worlds in the logo.
Mhm.
Ahsoka,
Mm.
hands down.
I'm excited for the Ahsoka show to undo the sequel trilogy, bring back Ben Solo, all the things that the crazy YouTubers say are going to happen that are not going to happen. So,
Well, I was just thinking about this.
yeah.
Looking at the 9 of us right here,
10.
there's only one person in
10.
that did not really like episode 8. Yes, I'm looking at you, Dave. But to me,
And I will die on that hill.
I was just gonna say that.
Good, we'll leave you there. Yeah, and we'll leave you there.
I love 8. I love 8.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm a
I was
huge
gonna say
Lando fan.
it.
Good and bad. Good and bad.
To me, I love that, but I love the storyline of Kylo Ren. I love the Kylo Ren angle, even from Force Awakens. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm also excited to see because one of the quotes that Jon Favreau put out when he first started Mandalorian was that he was utilizing Mando as a catalyst to link the OT and the sequel trilogy.
Mhm.
So very excited about seeing where that's going. But we're coming close to the end of this, so why don't we just do a rapid fire top thing that we love the Star Wars and our highlight of the virtual cantina this year. So first off, let's start with Mark, who's got these incredible glasses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mark, what was your highlight of Star Wars 2022?
Oh boy, Andor as a series, amazing. Mon Mothma in it, fantastic. For being on the VCN, I mean, our show's really new. So just being welcomed by everyone on Monday nights and seeing people pop into the chat and hang out with me and Ashley and Jeff, that's been a blast. And we're still going. That Google Doc we have, oh man.
It cannot be stopped.
Longer and longer.
Yeah. And we're on like page 40. So just being a part of this group has been tremendous. So thank you guys for and welcoming us in. It's been great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ashley.
Yeah, same thing as Mark said. Like Jeff and Mark and myself have definitely look forward to having you all on Mondays and watching with us and just getting to see how far this crazy Rebels web goes. We appreciate all of you and it's been so awesome to be part of the VCN and just be welcomed into the family even more so than we already were, before this. So thank you. And we're looking forward to all the fun to come in 2023.
Gio.
Yeah, just to keep it going with all the progress like the VCN made, and it's been really fun having the regularity for all these shows and to see it grow. And I feel like it's been a nice parallel with what Star Wars has done through 2022. It's kind of nice to see the fact that we've got a lot of great content we can focus on and hope to see more of, like Andor. And I'll just add, I think Tales of Jedi, the Count Dooku elements, some of them were up there with the best storytelling we've seen along with Andor. So I think there was a lot from the franchise that we got, and we got a lot of good conversation from each other. So again, just kind of going to sound a bit saccharine here, but thanks to all of you and to everyone who gets involved. Thanks to Catherine and Dave for keeping our show going, and it's just been a blast, and long may it continue.
Yeah. Kat, what was your highlight for 2022 Star Wars wise?
Well, VCN going strong. I like that. Star Wars wise, Andor from content. I thought that was a real highlight. Is it not just because the show was good, but the way that it's so different from what they've done before. It signifies that they're actually willing to take the franchise in different directions and that they're comfortable doing that. So that's what I really like about it. It gets you pumped for the future of Star Wars.
Excellent. Bryce.
Content wise, mine was Kenobi. My personal Star Wars moment was actually being in Anaheim, getting to Galaxy's Edge and building my lightsaber. For me, that was my personal win. Mike got to be there, and Mike filmed it for the channel, and he's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yes."
Can't not cry when that happens.
Yeah. That was my big personal win. Like, I was so excited to do it, and it paid off so much.
That's awesome.
Mike.
My favorite 22, two things. Number one, in terms of content, had to be Andor. Andor's my favorite because, I'm Mexican, he's Mexican. What's not to like? But the other, my favorite thing about all this is any opportunity that I had to connect in real life with other members of Star Wars Celebration Group. It's just been, anytime I meet anyone, getting to meet in person with Kat when I went up to Sacramento, or at Galaxy's Edge whenever anyone comes to visit Disneyland, or just hanging out for lunch like we did with Downtown Disney with friends of the show. And it's just like fantastic because everyone's just so amazing. Can't wait to meet with everybody else when we get the chance in person in real life, because that's just the best.
Gary, what was your highlight for 22 Star Wars wise?
I think I'd be remiss, buddy, if I didn't mention that it was myself and you hanging out in Epcot when we got to chat about all things Star Wars and some stuff we probably shouldn't know. So I think that's got to be number one for me. And I think in terms of content, it's got to be Andor. It was just that real gritty Star Wars that we've been crying out for a very, very long time.
Hefe.
Well, it sort of crosses over into content, but Star Wars in general, the experience of watching the first two episodes, or was it first two episodes of Obi-Wan in that arena with 7,000 other fans that were ready, that took it to another level. So, and Obi-Wan was good, but that experience was amazing. And of course Andor was great, and all the every Disney Plus show has just been icing on the cake, as it were. So I'm ready for more.
Dave.
I'm going to go with echoing Mike, is getting to see a lot of people in person from the VCN, people that I've only met on this screen. before, and seeing all of them in person, and two, like meeting Star Wars actors and celebs. I've got to put that even though it's slightly embarrassing, the Ewan McGregor moment, I have to put that out there in the world as being my top moment in Star Wars. But I've also met Tamora Morrison, who's amazing. I've met just a couple of weeks ago Ray Park, and got to do that with another member of the virtual Cantina as we met up and went on a little pilgrimage to meet Ray at a comic shop. And little things like that have been absolutely amazing, and the best thing going, I think, in Star Wars this year.
So for myself, I would say content-wise Andor, because it's been everything that I've been wanting for God knows how long of Star Wars.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very
That's
good.
close to there. I would say anything and everything that we've done this past year has been my highlight, from how incredibly successful Bunta Anaheim was, to the fact that, the other day I was thinking, I was like, something, was I really upset that I was not at Celebration? I said, something, Bunta was my celebration.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I
Yeah,
missed
you were there.
anything or anybody. The adventures a lot of us have had over the last year, getting together in various cons around the country, hangouts, randomly. It's the VCN growing as it is, and very excited about what's going on there. And speaking of the VCN, Dave, you want to do a quick plug for the VCN before we make some announcements about the VCN?
The VCN is, like we were saying earlier, I think Mark said it. If you haven't seen the content that we discuss in places like this, go back. All of this stuff is on demand. Is the watch alongs with Barry Lowen is there, with Misty, with Leilani, all of this stuff. Even further back, the speaker series that we've done. Go check out some of this cool Star Wars content. All the episodes of Jedi Archives, Rebels Revisited, Unifying Force, they're all there, and you can, binge them when you have time, or you can pick and choose here and there on demand. We've got more shows. Stuff is coming. We've got Rebels Revisited coming up tomorrow. The week after is the long anticipated return of Celebrating Autographs. We're going to have the Sunday before that. We'll have Unifying Force. There's just stuff going all the time, and I'm really hoping that this Thursday's watch along is going to have a little special treat and be a really good one. So check us out. Be there.
That, didn't we?
So also I want to plug the fact that as information starts to come out, we'll probably have another international news desk hosted by Gary and myself. A couple of them going up until Celebration, but that's not all. We are going to have an international news desk happening every single night of Celebration from our headquarters here in the United States, hosted by Mark and Ashley. So very excited about that. We're going to be feeding them information throughout the day from Europe, and then they'll come on in the evening and do a recap of the night, and hopefully we'll have videos and live action shots that we're going to send them. So, whoever's producing can show live reactions of how it really was there for that day. So, Mark, thanks for the idea.
Yeah, thanks for making me do it. No, but in all seriousness, this is my way of saying I will not be at Celebration 2023, unfortunately. But with that in mind, we don't want to be left out of all the festivities, and we wish all of you a great time. Yeah. Send lots of pictures. Keep us up to date. Obviously, it's mostly a weekend show, so the calendars are easy to clear. But even the one work day, I might just take off the one day and just have Twitter open for 12 straight hours. So
it'll be interesting to see the wrap-up show, the Rebels Revisited, on that Monday as well.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to take it. We haven't done a day off yet. We've done pre-records for our holidays, which I highly recommend everyone else does. We may have to do that for Celebration, but we have time for that. We're still 3 months out, so or more than that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And before that, we want to plug. We have 100 tickets left.
Ooh.
100 tickets left. So
Get
order
'em.
now. Get
And
them.
if you
Get 'em.
haven't seen it, check out all the merch and buy with your
A lot of
tickets
merch.
as well. There is a lot of cool. There's a patch, there's a pin, there's a poster, there's a T-shirt. Look for that Boonta Eve merch. There's been a lot of work gone into putting that out there, and we think it's going to be stuff you're really going to enjoy having as well. Get delivered.
And what's
to you
great
all.
as well is that you can pre-order your merch, and we're going to have a separate dedicated table for all pickups, separate from the merch table. So
Wow.
you'll be able to pick up your merchandise and your swag. You get a great swag bag, and I want to give quick props to Dave and to Jeff for doing some incredible designs. And I mean, their work is exemplary, and I can praise them to the ninth degree, but they're the real unsung heroes of the VCN. So they deserve all the praise all the way around, because all of us can say that we would not look as good if it wasn't for those two gentlemen. So
The men in the chair.
Yeah.
yes,
Behind the curtain.
there are Ned leads. So that's a bit of a
Micro.
wrap up before we go. First and foremost, I want to thank our guest Gary from Blob of the Hut. Gary, we're very excited to have you part of Boonta Eve. Looking forward to
Yay.
seeing you over across the pond on your side this time. Thank you very much, Gio. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ashley. As always, thank you, Dave and Jeff. We had an incredible 2022. 23 is going to be even better. So from Spencer and this whole clan of the biggest scum in the galaxy, we like to say Happy New Year. Stay on program. This is the way, and may the force be with you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Great 2023.
Live long and prosper. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Is that the one?
Wow.
Keep off the trick here.